Karen Gillan enters the restaurant in downtown Manhattan, tall and slightly ungainly, with the high color of one still young enough to be easily embarrassed. The 30-year-old recently moved to New York from LA, after 5 years spent appearing mainly in blockbusters, and is promoting a much more modest film today. The Party's Just Beginning, written by and starring Gillan, is also her directorial debut and is set in her native Inverness, although it's not the postcard version, she says, laughing. Nonetheless, it is infused with affection. All the time, she says, when I ask if she misses Scotland, I'm living with a consistent, subtle homesickness all the time. In the movie, which had a budget of £1.8 million, not the smallest in the world, says Gillan, but in the grand scheme of things very low, she plays Lucy, a woman in her early 20s still living at home and struggling to find a life beyond the cheese counter in the supermarket where she works and the emotionally deadened life of her parents. It is a film about youth, alienation and, above all, friendship, in which the strongest dialogue is that between Lucy and her married friend Donna, and strongly suggests that, while the movie is a drama, and at times a high drama, Gillan's writing talent may lie more persuasively in comedy. The actor herself is immensely cheerful. Gillan grew up the only child of parents who still live in Inverness and on whom, she says, the inadequate parents in her movie are emphatically not based. She started out acting as a teenager, with a small part in the TV detective show Rebus, and went on to play 3 seasons of Doctor Who, as Amy Pond, the Doctor's then sidekick. To appear on television seemed completely absurd to me, she says of those early jobs, although it is something she had been striving towards for so long that her dad used to tease her that as a kid, I would point at the television and say, "How do I get in there?" By 13 or 14, when I was able to use the internet, I could look up auditions, and then I was writing so many letters to people and sending stuff to agents. She was, she says, very much a 14-year-old with a plan, an unusual drive that she puts down in part to having grown up without siblings. Gillan was always off in her own head, making up stories or shooting amateur horror movies in which her dad gamely allowed her to cover him in ketchup. And if there was no acting background in the family, Gillan's mum worked in Tesco and her dad in a centre for people with learning disabilities. Both parents were highly encouraging of their daughters' odd interests. They never really expressed any doubt in me, which is the most valuable thing, she says. No one said, "Do you really think you should be doing this?" As a result, says Gillan, she started out with what, in retrospect, strikes her as a helpfully high dose of self-delusion. After school, she studied acting briefly in Edinburgh at Telford, now Edinburgh, College, and after an abortive few weeks at the Italia Conti Stage School in London, returned to Scotland to film Rebus. The experience of Doctor Who was gratifying and boosting, and, as Gillan realised afterwards, completely unrepresentative. I was really spoiled by going into something that people really gave a shit about. The film that brought her out to the US was Oculus, a sci-fi movie made by the producers of Paranormal Activity, and that set Gillan on the path of appearing in titles heavily reliant on green screen. She doesn't drive and LA was initially difficult, a question of taking cabs to auditions and afterwards, begging the receptionist for the Wi-Fi password to get online and find a local cab company to take her home again. It could have been horribly depressing, but Gillan is inclined not to see things this way. Every year, hundreds of young actors with decent credits to their name arrive in LA trying to break through to the big time. And although Gillan's success in Doctor Who didn't seem to catapult me anywhere, she says, neither was she put off by the competition. I didn't have any fear of that at all. I had suffered so many rejections, but it's like it has never fazed me. It did, however, suddenly occur to her one day that she might need to work on her acting. It's an